The shift from income thinking to asset thinking. Most people ask the wrong question. They ask, how much can I make per month? It's not the wrong question, but it's just incomplete. A better question to ask is, what am I building? So are you building a stressful job that depends on you? Or are you building a system that runs with or without you? Are you building a listing or a portfolio? Are you building a short-term cash business? Or are you building a long-term freedom business that you can leave to your children? Cash flow pays the bills, but assets change bloodlines. This is why we talk about mindset first, because I can teach you all the tactics, but without mindset, you'll misuse them. Your role as CEO. As the CEO of a short-term rental business, your job is not to do everything, but your job is to design a system, also to set standards, make decisions, protect the business, and think long-term. You see, you're not just a host hosting guests, you're actually managing risk, reputation, capital, operations, and growth. Once you have accepted this identity, things shift. You stop taking everything so personal. You stop reacting emotionally. You stop operating in survival mode, and you start thinking in strategy mode. Now, let me close this lesson with this. Everything you build from this point moving forward will fall on your identity you choose to operate from. If you see yourself as a host, you will behave as one. If you see yourself as a CEO, you'll build like one. So here's your assignment for lesson 1. I want you to take a moment and get a pen and paper and write this down by hand. I am the CEO of a short-term rental business. I make decisions based on systems, not just emotions. I build assets, not stress. Put it somewhere where you'll see it every day. Because as we go into lesson 2, you're going to have to form a mindset, and you're going to have to see these things clearly and develop these principles. Now we're moving into week 2, lesson 1. My name is King Raphael, and I just didn't become king by accident. I learned a lot of lessons along the way. Those stumbles helped to level me up. So I want to share with you a few things in my first 3 evictions that went wrong so that you won't have to make these same mistakes. Let me start with the lesson with honesty. This is not a highlight reel. This is not a flex. This is me telling you how perfect I was, because I wasn't. I saw real failure, and real failure costs real money. The kind that costs sleep, the kind that makes you question everything about yourself. Now, I want you to understand something very early in this academy. Failure is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. Failure is often the tuition for success. But here's the danger, and here's why this lesson matters. Some people pay that tuition once, but others keep paying it over and over again until they slowly have to get it in their heads not to make that mistake anymore. You see, the lessons that I've learned have stuck with me to the core, and I'm willing to share them with you today. When I first started my Airbnb business, I was hungry. I was motivated. I was ambitious, but I was also inexperienced. I didn't have mentorship. I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have anyone telling me what or what not to do. I was learning by trial and error. Well, here's the danger in that part. I had just enough early success to think I knew what I was doing. Now, that combination of confidence without experience is one of the most expensive mindsets you can have. Within my first few months, I experienced multiple evictions. Yes, multiple. With each eviction that came, shaped me as an operator that I am today. Let's talk about my first mistake. I overspent. I wanted everything to look perfect, so I spent top dollar. I bought furniture I didn't need yet. I upgraded things that didn't even affect the booking. I spent money like revenue was guaranteed. But revenue is never guaranteed in the beginning. I treated Airbnb like a finished business instead of a setup business. Here's what I didn't understand yet. In the early stages, your job is not perfection. Your job is proof of concept. I should have asked, does anyone guarantee bookings? Is this increased revenue, or is this just to make me feel good? Because the truth is, guests don't pay extra for expense or decor, or the fundamentals aren't right. Overspending squeezed my cash flow. Cash flow pressure leads to stress. Stress leads to bad decisions. The pressure made everything else worse. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Start lean, provide profitability, and upgrade profits over time. Now, renting to people under 21. That was my next big mistake. Let's talk about it. I didn't set an age requirement. And at the time, I thought booking was just a booking. Money is just money. But I always heard all money ain't good money. That thinking cost me. Younger guests often brought parties, noise complaints, property damage, neighborhood issues. People would leave trash in the neighbor's yard, and sometimes even police involvement. Well, not all young guests are bad, but I'm just saying that the risk increased dramatically, okay? And here's what I've learned the hard way. Your guest requirements are a risk filter, not discrimination. Age minimums are not about being unfair, they're about protecting your asset. Once neighbors complain, management notices. Once management notices, scrutiny increases. Once scrutiny increases, evictions become likely. One bag booking can create a chain reaction that can't be undone. The lesson here, your standards protect your business. Lower standards attract higher problems. Today, I strongly recommend 25 up. Trust me, unless you're operating in a very specific niche. Now, my next mistake, no security camera, which blows my mind to think about it. I didn't install a security camera, no doorbell camera, no exterior monitoring. So with this, everything went wrong. I had no evidence of parties when there were. I had no visibility, and I had no protection. So when neighbors complained, I couldn't even verify anything. When disputes happened, I had nothing to stand on. Security cameras are not about spying. They're about accountability. When people know they're being monitored, behavior improves. Parties decrease. Rules get followed. And if something does happen, you're not just guessing, you're documenting. So here's the lesson. A doorbell camera is not optional. It's insurance. The final straw for communication. This was a silent killer. I failed to communicate clearly. I assumed that guests wouldn't figure things out. I assumed common sense was common. I assumed silence meant understanding. These assumptions were wrong. I didn't clearly explain. I didn't explain the house rules, the noise expectations, the building sensitivities, the parking rules, and who to contact and who not to contact. I didn't explain, hey, stay out the office. Contact me if anything arises. So when expectations aren't clear, guests fill in the gaps incorrectly. And that's the truth. Most problems are communication problems before they become behavior problems. And a lot of those things come in the area of complaints, confusions, conflicts that lead to evictions. That was a lesson I had to learn. And I don't want you to have to experience what I experienced. So over communicate everything clear and kind. Now, the cost of these mistakes, let me be very clear with you. The mistakes cost me big. It cost me money, property, time, stress, had to create a new listing. It even took confidence from me. It slowed down my momentum. But on the flip side, it also gave me wisdom. It helped me with new systems. It gave me discipline. And it also gave me new standards to meet. The plan forced me to evolve. Being evicted forced me to change. And that's the difference between people who quit and people who win. Winners extract the lessons from the losses. Here's the turning point. After the third eviction, I had a moment. I could have just quit. I could have told myself, this isn't for me. It doesn't work. I'm not cut out for this. I keep getting evicted. But instead, I ask a better question. What do I need to do to change so that this never happens again? That question changed everything. I tightened standards. I added systems. I installed protections. I improved communications. And from that, my business changed and it stabilized. I learned about corporate housing. That really changed the game for me and gave me another set of rules to play by. So I want you to write this down. I want you to write down your guest requirements, your security setup, your communication standards, your startup budget cap. Create your eviction prevention, which is framework. Now, not after something goes wrong, what happens during? Because prevention always is cheaper than repair. Trust me, I had to learn that lesson the hard way. And in the next lesson, I'm going to tell you about how to go from having guests that completely blew my operations up, and I learned to communicate a lot better. And that's what happened.